It is day 163 of our 2020 Focus Bible reading. We are looking at the book of Acts, chapter 14. This is what we read. It says, "At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas went, as usual, into the Jewish synagogue. There they spoke so effectively that a great number of Jews and Greeks believed. But the Jews who refused to believe stirred up the other Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. So Paul and Barnabas spent considerable time there, speaking boldly for the Lord, who confirmed the message of his grace by enabling them to perform signs and wonders. The people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews, others with the apostles. There was a plot afoot among both Gentiles and Jews together with their leaders to mistreat them and stone them. But they found out about it and fled to Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe, and to the surrounding country, where they continued to preach the gospel. In Lystra, there sat a man who was lame. He had been that way from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul, and as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, 'Stand up on your feet.' At that, the man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, 'The gods have come down to us in human form.' Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard this, they tore their clothes and rushed out into the crowd, shouting, 'Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only human, like you. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God, who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them. In the past he let all the nations go their way, yet he has not left himself without testimony. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. He provides you with plenty of food and fills your hearts with joy.' Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowds from sacrificing to them. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. The next day he and Barnabas left for Derbe. They preached the gospel in that city and won a large number of disciples. Then they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. 'We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God,' they said. Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Lord, in whom they had put their trust. After going through Pisidia, they came into Pamphylia, and when they had preached the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia. From Attalia, they sailed back to Antioch, where they had been committed to the grace of God for the work they had now completed. On arriving there, they gathered the church together and reported all that God had done through them, and how God had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles, and they stayed there a long time with the disciples." All right, so it could be Attalia. I kept calling it Attalia. Not really sure which one that is, but anyway, as you look at this, there's a couple of things that I think are pretty fascinating. The one is just a little kind of throw-off line in verse 3. It says, "So Paul and Barnabas spent considerable time there, speaking boldly for the Lord, who confirmed the message of his grace by," and this is an important thing, "enabling them to perform signs and wonders." This is one of the verses that lends weight to the idea, because people are, wondering why we do not see the same level of miracles in our current day that you see in the ancient world, and you see in the first century church, and in the time of when Jesus was doing his miracles. And part of it is an explanation. And there are some who say, "Oh, well, that's watering down, and that's why we don't have miracles, because you lack faith." I don't lack faith. I don't lack faith that God can do whatever he wants. I pray that God would do miracles. I pray for miracles on a daily basis. And that won't stop, because God's able to do what he wants. In this case, they were performing miracles, and they were enabled It was a grace of God enabling them to perform signs and wonders so that the message would be confirmed. And you'll find that same pattern in the life of Jesus. It was the miracles were for the confirming of the message. And in the ancient world where you had these competing gods, they're introducing a god. And they have these superstitions, and they had miracles. There were demonic miracles happening. And so God enables the miracles so that they have power behind the message. And that's an important thing. That's part of the reason why miracles happen to this day, because often the miracle is then accompanied with a message, a gospel message. It empowers that message. We do not see that as often in the North American context as you'll find it in other parts of the world, where there is a little bit more of a competition when it comes to who God is. And so it's an interesting dilemma. I don't know that I'll ever have an answer to figure it out. It doesn't change my prayers. It doesn't change my behaviors. It does make me very skeptical of those who make claims of miracles, but one can't ever verify those miracles in any substantial way, and the miracles are absent the message of the gospel. And I think we need to be very, very cautious about those things. I tell you what, I've said this before. If I am ever given the gift of miracles, you probably won't be seeing me on Sundays, because if I have the gift of healing, I'm going to be too busy at the U of M. I'm going to be too busy at St. Joe's and you name it, Detroit Mercy. I'm going to go. I'll be just a bit of a full-time job, just going everywhere I can to bring healing to as many people as I can. But here's the amazing thing. Even though they did miracles, even though the message was confirmed, and there were people who believed, and many people who believed, this story ends with them being forced out of cities, at one point, being threatened to be stoned, so they escape, and those people catch up, and the Apostle Paul is stoned to the point where they believe he's dead. That could not have been good. I don't think this was a miraculous kind of, deliverance from stoning. I think he was beaten nearly to death with stones, and maybe he had a miraculous recovery. But wow, even the thought of it, I'm like, God, don't help me recover, help me escape. This is an amazing thing. And then they go back. This is the power of God in somebody's life. They go through all of this. They go through all this trauma, and they go back. They actually go back through the very places where they were punished and injured and really driven out. It's just an amazing. That is amazing to me. That's what they chose to do, and just the work that they were doing just so they could go and strengthen the brothers and sisters, so they could go to those who accepted and say, hey, we need to help you get organized. Don't give up the faith. It's just a fascinating thing, the endurance of the apostles and their work, and just how Christ was compelling them to keep walking through the door, because God had opened the door to the Gentiles, and they were not going to be held back. I love that. I think it's an amazing thing. Miracles or not, I think it's just an amazing commitment that they had. It's astounding, and it should inspire us to be willing to endure mild inconvenience for the gospel, given what God was doing through them. All right. Lots more there, but that's all I got for today, so we will see you tomorrow. Have a good one.